here we are walking to the Capitol, and it was a perfect day. It was beautiful. The sky was blue with clouds. But we saw the dome and the fountains and all of it, and it was just this entering this beautiful space. It was just gorgeous. We walked through the main hall, the hall opened up, and there were photographers from all around the world there. The place was packed.
Sculptor Littleton Alston arrives in Statuary Hall on the second floor of the U.S. Capitol on the most thrilling day of his professional career. His 7-foot bronze of Nebraska writer Willa Cather is hidden under cloth. Today, she'll be unveiled for the world to see.
Her novels, her writing, her presence, her influence. I think that's what makes her great. Telling a story about our nation through her characters in a way that allows all of us, even today, to connect, to feel a sense of connectedness to the past. We're nothing if we don't understand our past. We're nothing if we don't have artists who understand that.
What would Willa Cather think of the recent past, when protesters stormed the U.S. Capitol and moved through Statuary Hall on their way to challenge the U.S. election?
Unbelievable. Yeah. We are televising the breach.
Listen, you can't get through with a hairbrush that's metal. How do they get through with a flagpole?
That's right. We own it. We own you.
2.5 years have passed. The physical evidence of the insurrection is gone as Willa Cather prepares to take her place in Statuary Hall.
I know you're excited, but I'm more excited because this is the first statue I get to do as being Speaker. You know, every state sends 2 statues of extraordinary citizens to the U.S. Capitol to represent them in Washington. By law, the statues have to be made of bronze or marble. But make no mistake, the men and women we honor here are living symbols who represent our national memory, our patriotism, and our shared American creed. E pluribus unum. Out of many, one.
It was 2019 when Littleton Alston was chosen from among 70 artists to create a bronze of Nebraska's world-famous author. He began by listening to her books and looking at her many portraits.
I look at each of the images and just to sort of get a sense of her, but also just to make sure that because I sculpt from the inside out, that everything is there. So I'm not making a doll. I'm actually making a human form. There are times when you're sculpting a form that's moving through space, there are a lot of dynamics going on. You may not recognize it as just a viewer, but to the artist, there's 1,000 things happening, and you're trying to orchestrate all of that. And there are days in which I would go in and make changes and think, oh, I've got it. Oh yeah, that's it. And then I'd go home and come back in the morning and go, oh no, that's not it. That was most frustrating.
Alston unveiled the first version of his statue in Willa Cather's hometown of Red Cloud, Nebraska.
I look at the maquette as a poem, and then I look at the 4-foot version as a short story. And then the 7-foot, which will be in bronze of Willa in Statuary Hall, will be the novel.
The next time he unveiled Willa Cather in his Omaha studio, she had changed. Members of the Willa Cather National Statuary Hall Selection Committee were impressed. The poem has become the short story.
I wanted to capture that, that wind surrounding her and her vision. Also, I put in around her the memories of Nebraska. So there's the wagon wheel and the arc of the wheel here as well as here. And then the cane coming up with her pen and her writings. So she's striding forward into history.
I like this better than that. I liked that when I saw
Yes.
the Red Cloud.
Yes.
But this is less matronly.
Yes.
And I like that because she doesn't need to be portrayed matronly. She needs to be alive, and I love the look on her face, like she is thinking and she is looking ahead. It's quite moving.
Finally, at a foundry in Colorado, Alston supervises the finishing touches on his vision of Willa Cather, the novel.
It's like an adrenaline rush, and it's beautiful to see it. The heat and the fire and just the way in which it becomes almost a primal emergence of a form, doesn't it? It's just astonishing. It's almost like we're pulling it out of this cradle, right? And it's just, it's coming alive right in front of you.
After that, Willa had to go into storage. She was ready, but Statuary Hall was not. It would be almost 2 years before Congress was prepared to dedicate another statue to the collection. By the time Willa Cather joined the Hall of Statues, it was the 150th anniversary of her birth.
We ready? Yep. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Littleton, she is beautiful. Willa is stepping forward, just like you told us she would. Thank you. Cather's vivid, reflective writing has become synonymous with the pioneer spirit of Nebraska.
Littleton Alston's bronze statue on its granite pedestal stands 10 feet tall and weighs nearly 1,200 pounds. The gold inscription on the front reads, Nebraska, Willa Cather, author, 1873 to 1947. And as she wrote in her novel, O Pioneers, the history of every country begins in the heart of a man or a woman.
There was a sense that a lot of things had come full circle. And I feel as though I've been lifted onto a carpet and just sort of flown around. It was really beautiful.
Littleton Alston is the first African American to create a statue for the collection. His Willa Cather replaces J. Sterling Morton, founder of Arbor Day, who was also a fervent supporter of slavery. 4 years earlier, Nebraska replaced a bronze of orator and politician William Jennings Bryan with Chief Standing Bear of the Ponca tribe, whose famous courtroom battle established Native Americans as persons under the law.
I think Nebraska is more than you think. I think the people of Nebraska are so diverse and so independent in so many ways that you'll be surprised at what you'll find. And I think that that's the great strength of Nebraska. We are capable of always accepting others who are on that journey in trying to find a home, and also inviting them into the home of Nebraska and letting them understand and appreciate what it is to be a part of this. And I think on that day of the dedication, we were unified, all of us. and it was joyous.